finding Jesus at the heart of the Gospels, finding Jesus at the heart of His love, learning about the things that He said, finding His love and guidance for living, seeking the gospel and following His ways. We are finding Jesus at the heart of the Gospels, finding Jesus at the heart of His love. There is common ground we found in the four Gospels and beyond, but anchored in His teachings and wisdom. Seeking Jesus, we are searching His word. Seeking Jesus, we are resting in His grace. We are the Good News Fellowship, growing and following His love. We are the Good News Fellowship, seeking Jesus' guidance from His word. We find peace on this common ground, allowing space to grow. We find peace on this holy ground. Sacred ways are felt and unity is sound. Peace in the knowing that this good news can be found. Jesus at the center of our hearts, 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 Jesus at the center of our hearts. Welcome to our Good News Fellowship. Welcome to our Good News Fellowship. We are finding Jesus at the heart of the Gospels, finding Jesus at the heart of His love, learning about the things that He said, finding His love and guidance for living, seeking the gospel and following His ways. We are finding Jesus at the heart of the Gospels, finding Jesus at the heart of His love. There is common ground we found in the four Gospels and beyond, but anchored in His teachings and wisdom. Seeking Jesus, we are searching His word. Seeking Jesus, we are resting in His grace. We are the Good News Fellowship, growing and following His love. We are the Good News Fellowship, seeking Jesus' guidance from His word. we find peace on this common ground, allowing space to grow. We find peace on this holy ground. Sacred ways are felt and unity is sound. Peace in the knowing that this good news can be found. Jesus at the center of our hearts. 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 Welcome to our Good News Fellowship. Welcome to our Good News Fellowship.
You love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same. Will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Well, here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again. never be the same.
Hello and welcome to SDAQ&A, throwing Gillian forward into the deep end with no green room at the start. Bang in live we go. Good to see you, Gillian.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, welcome everybody. Great to have the tribe gathering once more. And wow, I tell you what, yesterday's reading of Monica Vowless, would you call it an open letter? I don't know. Either way, it was mind blowing. It was as fresh to read. If you'd said to me, a friend of yours wrote this last week, I'd believe it. I'd go, yeah. Like even, is it syntactically, grammatically, the phrasing, the jargon, very fresh. A woman very much ahead of her time. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. If you're watching and you saw yesterday's program, this is part 2. We're going to be continuing our reading of Monica Vowless, her open letter. And then next week, I'm hoping to read her husband's material as well, Robert Thomas Vowless. And yeah, just mind-blowing. And Gillian, you are the one that brought it to my attention. I'd never heard of them before, but I did know there was a cabal of dissidents in New Zealand in the 30s and 40s, and you mentioned them yesterday and gave a fantastic intro to this couple and to that time period, and a lot of the material you will be including in your volume 10. Have you got that there you could hold up for us?
I did. I just did a run to get it.
Awesome. And that is going to be
It's a whopper.
It's a fantastic series. Number 10.
Use it for a doorstop.
It'll be a wonderful addition to my coffee table. So just a quick announcement. Tomorrow and our Good News Fellowship. I am not going to be able to have a program tomorrow. It is my 40th anniversary of graduating from Avondale, Gillian, and a group of friends are catching up tomorrow for lunch. And I thought, well, 40 years, that doesn't come by very often. We'll probably all be dead by the 50th anniversary. So no.
Well, Milton's going.
Is he going?
Will be there, and so will Harry Valles, I think.
Great. Well, I will be looking out for them over the weekend. Anyone from my era, we're meeting at 2:00 somewhere there on the grounds, and then tomorrow for lunch with a bunch that we've already organised. So unfortunately, no Good News Fellowship tomorrow, and unless we can magic it up, and someone can do the controls. I don't know. We'll see how we go, but I'm 90% sure it won't happen. Book club, however, will go ahead, and I will talk to Rochelle Anonymous about that, and I'm hoping that she will run it with her own Zoom account. Also, I have asked a few people to help me out organising presenters for Good News Fellowship. I have a list of 15 or 16 presenters that regularly speak on the program, and a couple of people have put their hand up to help me, which is fantastic. And if I think they might be watching today as well, I will reach out after today's program and chat more about that as well. Okay, so this incredible person, Monica Adelaide Vowless, quick recap, Gillian, and also share with us Oh, well, sorry, one quick thing. I had a few questions about our new theme song for Good News Fellowship, which I played. Now, I have to be full disclosure here. I wrote the words and typed in some chords to AI, and that's what it produced. I'm very blown away by that. So, yeah, my lyrics, my chords, and some melody ideas, but it pulled out the rest. So full disclosure there, AI is changing the world. Okay, back to you, Gillian. Tell us what you thought of yesterday's program, and then give us a recap and some new thoughts, and then we're going to get straight into it today, reading more of the open letter that she wrote in 1935.
Right. So I won't go into the background of how I got to this. I didn't put this in volume 10, but it came out of doing volume 10 right at the end. And because it's 580 pages long, I didn't have any room to put it in. And it's not quite what my book's about. So I thought I'd do this as a separate piece.
Yes.
I found his version first, and then later came across, I say his contribution, then I found hers. So I've done a brochure. I've given it a little bit of artwork on the front. I put her, the one that you're reading, first. In the middle, I've done all the biographical material I could find, because she was featured in news notes in various papers here and in America. She taught at Avondale, so I've got all the stuff put in the middle. I've copied it, given the dates, because what I'm doing is for future historians to use. So I'm giving them the material to write up future works. So, and of course, yesterday I knocked out a bit of a biography. It was done very fast, and I was doing other stuff yesterday morning as well. But anyway, now I've done that, I can sort of.
And you'll include that biography into this little leaflet as well.
Yes, I'll put it in.
Let me know when that's ready, and we will make it available to people as a PDF.
Well, that's what I hope for.
You want.
Now, when I read it, I thought, now Peter would love this.
Yes, and you can tell I do.
Comment. I just sent it to you along with the one from Grieve.
Yes,
now, Grieve wrote a paper.
I haven't got into that one yet, but I can't wait. We're going to be doing a program on that one as well.
Well, they're both very important. So I put the Grieve one, which is about 30 pages long, in the book. And I got that by the sort of magic that works when I'm doing books. I find stuff. Gilbert Valentine I think it was last year, wrote an article for Spectrum about Heppenstall, and he had some things about Grieve, because once Grieve was put out, Heppenstall was sent over to Australia to basically talk to the ministers. And there's stuff about Grieve, which I'll mention after this. You know, we're going to talk about the book, but there's so much in it, I couldn't do it in one go on different things. But there's stuff in there that you will find about Grieve that's very, very interesting. And when I finish the biography, excuse me, blame the nose. It won't take me long, but it will certainly whet your appetite.
Yes.
Because I know you and I know what you like. Anyway.
Thank you.
The Vowless family, you've got, so John Trim, who a lot of you would know as the minister, his mother was Miriam Ida Ballard, the daughter of somebody Ballard, whose name I forget, and he married an Elwyn, Elwyn. And they had Ida. They probably had other children as well. And then he died, and she married Richard Ching. And I have a little bit about him where he's trying to get through a river. You know, you're looking for stuff. It's not easy to find stuff, but there's a bit about him. He had a wagon and horses going through a flooding river, and he nearly drowned. He called out for help, and a blacksmith came and rescued him out of the water. Otherwise, we wouldn't have heard this. So he marries the widow, and she's quite wealthy. Now, I learned that from Mary Trim yesterday. Every time I talk to Mary, I get a little bit more
information
to add to the story, which is good. Because these were relatives. She didn't really know. She thought that the Vowless husband was the heretic. She knew nothing about what Monica was up to, which is interesting. But she said yesterday, Monica was a very in-your-face person, whereas her sister Elsie was loving and kind and fairly laid back. And she was, I think, the secretary-treasurer of the New Plymouth Church for many, many years. And I found a piece where they celebrated her life. They all went to, had a party because of her. So different personality, which is another interesting piece. She also told me that she went over to Loma Linda to do medicine and that her mother got sick and she had to come home. But after being at Loma Linda for 2 years, in which time she wouldn't have had time to finish medicine, she went to Walla Walla and did the college course, whatever that was, and came back to Avondale and taught at Avondale for a year. But she was, as you'll see, she was not happy. You may have even mentioned it yesterday. She wasn't happy there, and so she went back early 1932 or late 1931 to Australia. So anyway, I've sort of missed out a bit, but I'll go back. So that's the family background. Richard Ching marries a widow. He's 55. He lives to 69. So she's left with 2 children to that marriage, as well as the other ones, including John Trim's mother. So in 1913, she's left a widow, a wealthy widow. And in the 1920s, at some point, at least by 1923, she'd taken her 2 girls to Australia. Now, she had a property in Cooranbong, which she sold in 1925. I found the sale. But Mary said yesterday, so you had little details, that she had a house in Fox Valley Road.
Wow.
Because her daughter Elsie worked for the division. Now, Elsie was born in, I think, 1902, and I think that Monica was born in 1905. I'm not great with numbers. And if there's 2 choices, I get them the wrong way round. Dyslexic is the word. I'm a bit dyslexic. So you have to forgive me for that. Anyway, so they go. I mentioned yesterday that Monica was at Avondale. We don't know whether it was for how long for, but it would have been several years. She was there in 1924, and I pointed out to you because I've been doing a plot map of what was going on really from the 1920s through the 60s. And W.W. Prescott, now I went back and looked at him, and Gilbert has done a book about him, and I think he also did the Esther thing. Now, he wouldn't have been at Avondale in 1924 because he went over in 1921 they were having trouble because they put the fees up and they had a big drop in students. So he went over to sort all that out. He put somebody in at Lockwood or Lynn Woods, I think it was, as president. And he became like the field secretary. He was traveling a lot around Australia. W.W. Fletcher was definitely there in 1924. And I'm sure that he would have, Prescott would have appeared at Avondale in that time. He went back sometime in 1924, so he's not there for the full school year. Just to give you a picture. And whoever it was that taught to Monica's mother in Sydney had left the church. And I went and had a look. When did Fletcher leave the church? That was in the late 1930s. And Prescott, he had friends. He got horribly persecuted by the right wing, J.S. Washburn. And they knew that he had different views on the sanctuary, but somehow, because they respected him so much, he wasn't actually put out. So they knew that he was That's my understanding, because I read it fast just before I came on. So it may not have been either one of them that talked to the mother, because they hadn't actually left the church at that point. And I don't think Fletcher had fully developed his ideas anyway at that point. But I told you that R.A. Grieve was there.
Yep.
And there's a social piece that mentions Monica in the science class and another person, Grieves. But I talked to Mary about that, and she said that was a professor who taught
so
voice.
a different
It's
Grieve.
a different one.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't the same one. So
Right.
I'm correcting as I go.
Yeah, that's good.
And I think he taught Des to sing or something.
So, yeah, there's some
And
connection.
that would be probably the most difficult job anybody could have, because Des, he couldn't keep a tune at all. Anyway, the name is familiar, and it wasn't
Yes.
R.A. Grieve.
Okay.
All right. So 1927, Monica goes to PUC. She writes about her time there. It's published in the record. And she mentioned she's going to Loma Linda. So for the years 28 and 29, she's probably at Loma Linda. And then comes, I'm not quite sure when, to Walla Walla, finishes the college course there and comes back. In 1931, she's on the faculty teaching English, not science. And so this gives you a bit of a background when she talks about her experience at Avondale. And in the article, she writes an article. I've put the whole article in the middle of this brochure so that you can come in and make your own conclusions about it. I'm just telling you how I've put it together. And she mentions W.G. Turner, who was the Australasian professor. She also mentions that when she was back at Avondale in 1931, A.F.J. Kranz was there.
Right.
As the Bible teacher. Now that's one of these interesting things on my plot map.
And this is Russell Cran's father?
Father. And he preached at Avondale just before we went to, in the late 1970s, pure gospel sermon. Wonderful man. And I told you, because I've been working, this is sort of as an afterthought. When I was talking to Mary, I was working between Harry Valles, because I'd got this article on Wally Drain from New Zealand, who nobody's heard of. I'd heard the name, but that's all I knew. Now, he was a gospel person. He was against the sanctuary and the investigative judgment and pro-justification by faith. He got put out in early 1956, and he said to his daughter, because I've got stuff in the book by his daughter, Jan Lawson, who's done a great job putting together his biography, and then Ross Wainwright wrote it for me to put in the book. He said R.A. Grieve and he had separate paths, but converged.
Oh.
But yeah, he was a very wide. Wally Drain made me think of Des a lot. He was an idealist from a young child, and what Des called an autodidact.
Right.
Taught themselves from reading writers from outside Adventism. So he's a very interesting person to read about. But I told you that because of Grieve.
Was Lou Weir in the mix there somewhere as well?
Pardon?
Was Lou Weir somewhere
now,
there?
Lou Weir is in the 40s. He gets put out in 1943.
But he's part of that New Zealand. He's part of that New Zealand group, isn't he? Yeah.
Now, what I did was I got the Wally Drain thing. That led me to Grieve, and I got into Lowell Tarlin's book, The Edges of Adventism. What I did was I summarised this stuff on Prescott, Fletcher, Grieve, to put in a series to introduce Wally Drain. That's how it worked. And I asked Lowell, who's not interested in the religious side of things, he said, it's okay, pass it by Robert Wolfgram. So I passed it by Robert Wolfgram, who gave me this interview that he did with Ron Numbers.
Yes.
So he comes later. I've got stuff from
Is that a tape or a written one?
That was a podcast. And because of AI, I would never have been able to interpret it, because in the past, I've typed transcripts. I've done a lot of it for the books. But this one, I gave it to Jaden Lawson, and he used AI and came out with a very good transcript.
Wow.
And then I passed it back to Robert. He said, "You've got the wrong transcript." So we had to do it again. Oh, what I do for the sake of history.
Yeah.
So anyway, once I'd done that, I said to Milton, "Have you got anything else?" And he said, "I've done several articles on Lou Weir." And I said, "Oh." And they're in the Ellen White Centre. They've been investigated by historians, so they're available. Anyway, I put them in the book. Now, that was about 90 pages of stuff.
Mm.
And that's on his life history and why he left the church. And it should have been published. So I've got Lou Weir, and then I've got these others. And I told you I did this big plot map because I could see certain links. So I had Lou Weir, and then Fletcher and Prescott, Light Touch, and Grieve. And then I got into Wally Drain and found out that year there was 6 people put out.
Yeah.
2 were connected with Grieve and Drain. The others, 3, 4 of them on the same issue. The other 2 were put out for other reasons. And one of them, Mary Trim, had mentioned his name and said he got put out. She'd known him in New Zealand. He was in Des's graduation class. So I was interested in him. And then when I'm talking back to Harry, I find out Harry has he has decades of North New Zealand conference notes. So he knew Wally Drain, he'd interviewed him, he'd spent a lot of time with AFJ Kranz. He knew Neil Smith and said he stayed in the church, otherwise I'd know nothing about his future. So he went through and he picked out the notes that talked about the 6 of them being put out. Now, I didn't actually put those in the book, but I used them as a summary,
right?
So this really gives you how I got to the Vowlesses, because I'm dealing between. I come back to talking to Mary because she's had this bad fall, and every time I talked to her, she added something, and she said there was somebody else. There was a relative of John's in New Zealand, and the husband left. She didn't know when it was. She didn't know the name. But she talked about Auntie Molly or Monica, and then she talked about Elsie. And then I called her back one day. She said their surname was Ching. Now, this is not a Chinese name. This is a British name. It's particularly in Devon, and it comes from the word chine, which means chasm or crevice or something like that. So anyway, that gives you that little bit of history.
Did Mary Trim actually know Monica?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because she knew the personality. Yeah, they had contact with them.
Yeah.
So, and I told you that yesterday, just before I spoke yesterday, I found, and I talked to Mary about this yesterday as well. I said, you wrote an unpublished autobiography of A.H. Piper. And I knew him, and I knew Elsie Ching because I came into the church in New Zealand, in New Plymouth.
Yeah.
Particularly, they were in the church, and A.H. Piper was there as a very old man. And when I got baptized, he gave me messages to young people.
Yes, that's right. The one
so some of this is sort of familiar to me. Now, anything else that she told me yesterday that's, because she keeps on adding facts, but she'd written this biography, and in it, because I'm searching, find the document, then I search in the document for the name Vowless, and up comes a sentence that A.H. Piper, doesn't give a date, was dealing with the Nicolaisi shepherd's rod and the Vowless thing. So these poor, there's a lot of activity in the SPD, Australia and New Zealand. New Zealand were very much part of it. So anyway, we'll go back to Monica. She gets back to Avondale. It's very hard for me to speak in a direct line, as you can see. She goes back to New Zealand. The rest of the family have already gone back. And within 3 months, she marries this Vowless. So I'd say she knew him before she left, because you wouldn't think she'd meet him and instantly marry him. She's not that sort of girl who'd do something like that. But anyway, and she's troubled because everywhere she's gone, she's talked. And, we mentioned she talked to Willie White. She talked to Leroy Froome. So, and found them evasive and actually didn't tell her the truth when she went through it herself. So her husband was very bright. He was an independent missionary who kept the Sabbath, and he came back to New Zealand, and the local church in New Zealand asked him first to preach, then asked him to join the church, and he did. And of course, after he joined the church, then he went into all the doctrines. And you'll find his papers interesting because he takes on, forget now, I think the investigative judgment and prophecy, and he talks about Antiochus Epiphanes and Syria, not Rome, and he does it very well. That's one reason for putting this out, because if you struggle with these arguments, because what the Adventists have come up with is very complicated, though. So for the average person, they have to accept it by faith because they can't understand it.
Yeah.
And anyway, here's somebody who's able to very clearly enunciate the problems and very focused. So when you get onto that paper, you'll see that. Now, just a little bit back to Grieve, because I know this will interest you, and we can talk about it another day. You know that in 1952, W.H. Branson is the General Conference president, and there was a big Bible conference, and about 400 Bible teachers came, and out of that, Leroy Froome put together from those meetings Movement of Destiny. And so that's 1952. Now, Branson's a link because he is Numbers' grandfather. Numbers came from a very elite family. His first cousin was Roy Branson. But all of his family were ministers on both sides, several generations. And anyway, I'll talk more about him afterwards, but there's that link. Now, Branson takes the position that they took in 1919, and he says our ministers are not to read outside the denomination, and they're only to read Ellen White, not, sort of question it. So he continues on what happened in 1919. Now, tell me if I'm too detailed on this. I'm trying
no,
to
it's good.
brief.
It's good. Well,
it's sort of important.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So,
yeah.
Now, having interrupted myself, I have to think again. Where was I?
About they weren't allowed to read outside of
That's right.
Ellen White. And
so we bring down the kibosh, what I call bringing down the kibosh, which is
and who was saying that?
W.H. Branson.
Yes, that's interesting.
And he gave the death degree to his grandson without knowing it.
Yeah.
Because when he starts to explore Ellen White, he's done for.
Exactly. Once this book, this is the
and
Ron
when you
Numbers
read it,
book.
it's very mild. And very respectful.
Very respectful.
And the way he was treated was appalling.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all in volume 10.
Yeah.
So there's a link.
He was on the show, if anyone wants to.
Yeah, and I'll talk more about the links, because knowing who knew what and when they knew it. Anyway, get back and try and be brief again, which is I find difficult. So Leroy Froome and R.A. Anderson are trying to reach out to the evangelical world.
Yes.
They're progressive. And in 1955, who should come over to Australia when R.A. Grieve is conference president in Queensland, and F.G. Clifford has come in from South Africa.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. I'll mention that when I talk about volume 10. The reason why he was picked, but he's a very good man. A lot of these people are very good men, very charismatic, good speaker, etc. but quite narrow, and very much a man of protocol. He's British, but he's worked for several decades with Neil Wilson's dad in South Africa. So R.A. Anderson comes over. Somebody suggested to visit his mother, but I haven't sort of gone back and looked when his father died and all that sort of stuff. And he's asked by F.G. Clifford to go and straighten R.A. Grieve out.
Yeah.
Now, what happens, according to Lowell, because he interviewed R.A. Grieve, is R.A. Grieve straightens out R.A. Anderson on the nature of Christ, the sinless nature of Christ. And Froome and R.A. Anderson were great readers of outside literature. Anderson he was the ministerial secretary and the editor of the ministry for 16 years, so he was the big player. So this is 1955, and instead of R.A. Anderson turning Grieve around, R.A. Grieve turns R.A. Anderson around, and thus has a global effect on the church, which is what.
Yes.
So thank you, Lowell, for writing that book.
Yes. Wow.
Much appreciated. There's a lot of good stuff in it. So
yeah, a lot of the work that he did.
So a couple of years later, but there's correspondence. I see I got this from Harry Valles.
Yeah, I was just going to say a lot of Lowell and Harry's work is incredible.
Yeah, but before this volume, I hadn't had contact with Harry about the books. And I was, it's between Mary Trim and Harry that all this stuff has sort of come out, because the first reason I contacted Harry was I wanted that interview he did with Des after Glacier View, which is a corker. It's in volume 10. But then I started talking to him about what Mary told me, and he knew Wally Drain. I'd interviewed him, I've told you this, several times. Had the notes of these men being put out. I'd interviewed and known most of them, knew AFJ Kranz. And so anyway, I've got in the book several pages of correspondence from R.A. Anderson to Grieve. And he's saying to him, don't say much, hold on, because there's going to be big changes.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, F.G. Clifford, without the way they acted is the way they still act today. Do stuff behind the scenes, no explanation, just out. And that's the thing that's wrong.
That's right.
To me, that's what's wrong. And what has to be corporately confessed, because it still goes on.
Yeah.
Anyway, AFJ Kranz, I've just mentioned this, and that link between Grieve and R.A. Anderson is very key. Because at the time, W.H. Branson was the previous General Conference president in 1952. In 1954, when they switch over, when you remember that Neil Wilson's dad was slated to be the next one, he blots his copybook and resigns. And so he's out, and they put in Figure, who's a different kettle of fish altogether.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So he permits the progress of Anderson and Froome, but then in the next decade, in comes Pearson, and they take it out of print. They take out Froome's book, they take out R.A. Anderson's book, but it's too late, because they've sold 135,000 copies of Questions on Doctrine. So the person who brings me in, Eric Robinson, who's alive and in New Zealand when all this stuff is going on in the 50s, I'd love to talk to him now. He teaches me the sinless nature of Christ.
Yeah. See, this is when the church split without it even realizing
stuff. So it's very interesting. It's been churning around,
and I agree with you. Since. I agree with you that the leadership is culpable and needs to own up and at least admit. But I'm also feeling that the good guys need to at least be accountable and say, hey, look, we did know this stuff was going on, and we could have, or even ask, what could we have done better? I just want to see some accountability from the good guys who seem to.
Well,
just
we've got to
keep
remember
silent.
that now we know it's easy to judge people. A lot of people didn't have a clue about this. It's only because
I'm meaning
doing
now.
these books
I'm
that I'm
meaning
becoming
now.
aware of it.
I'm not meaning back then. I fully understand. I was one of the people that was trying to bring about change and offer hope for a different kind of church as well. So I'm not accusing those good gospel Adventists of the silence back in the day. I'm just wishing they would speak up more now, and I wish they would say, hey, here's some things we could have done differently, instead of trying to maintain this kind of secret.
While you have the attitude of administration, and you can see their problem. You know, I put down a list. A.H. Piper talked about the Nicolaitans and the Shepherd's Rod, which I don't know very much about. But they were big problems. And then you've got these other people come up, and they're on the defense all the time. And in the SPD, at the time when F.G. Clifford is acting, you've got Bob Brinsmead,
Yes.
R.A. Grieve, these other ministers who went with him. And he was very outspoken. Wally Drain and all these people. And so they just put a stop to it.
Yes.
They just come down. And the problem is they're still doing it.
Yeah, and that's where ultimately I 100% agree with you that's the first port of call if you're going to offer any kind of criticism. The people that put the kibosh, is that how you termed it, and silence people. And yeah, I agree with you.
While that goes on, you know, and they've got it down to a fine art now. I mean, for some reason, I hear a lot of stuff of what goes on now, and it's just appalling.
Yeah.
Just appalling. It's shameful.
It is shameful. And it continues on. Now,
but my main issue is to tell the history and the promotion of the gospel against the investigative judgment and why.
Yes.
And in the hope, as Robert Wolfgram says, my books are redemptive. And I think to myself, in the end, that people have got to make their own choice.
I agree. Yeah.
A lot of people don't have the disposition. Look at the difference between the Vowless sisters in their nature.
Yeah.
And other people possibly can't get around the complicated arguments.
Totally get that.
And I know for a lot of women that they think that the investigative judgment is just impractical. They're trying to raise kids. They want them to feel accepted. And so I took the position early on. I've now learned a lot more about the arguments I had to do these books. But I thought to myself, practically, it's a horrible doctrine. Why would I want to know the ins and outs of the investigative judgment?
Yeah. Yeah, that's ironic, isn't it?
So anyway, I've probably taught too long. But
well, we'll get into reading more of Monica's open letter now. And thank you so much, Gillian. Gillian Ford, everybody. What would we do without Gillian Ford? Let's put our hands
one
together.
One day you'll have to do without me.
Me too. We're both.
Anyway, I started to read my own book, which I rarely do, and I thought, boy, this is good. This one.
I love it. Well, when that's available, and hey, while I'm doing this series, I'll do hopefully Robert Thomas Valles article next week, and I want to do the Grieve one after that. We might get you back just to give a little bit of commentary as well, perhaps after I've read it and come on after. But yeah, thank you so much, Gillian, and I'll go ahead now and boot you off, and
yes, I'll leave
and read the.
I'm willing to go.
Continue reading the. It's not really an article, is it? It's like a.
Well, it's now a brochure.
Yeah.
And it's being proofed. That's the issue. I never put any pressure on my proofer because she's a very busy lady.
Yeah.
And once it's done, I'll let you know, and I'll send it to you, and you can send it everywhere, because they're both very important documents.
Yeah. Can't wait.
And like the Vowless one, R.A. Grieve is arguing for justification by faith and the investigative judgment. Doesn't get into the prophecy thing that I recall, but he does it very well. He does it by the Bible, Book of Hebrews. So for people who struggle to get the arguments, to be able to remember them, these documents are very, very good.
Yeah.
You just have to get over your prejudice that you've been told that R.A. Grieve is a terrible man. Now, Des went and listened to him in 1957, I think. He was in Inverell, so it was close by, and he spent a couple of days with him. He was asked to do it, and he said to me, Grieve was right. But he was very, very bitter. And see, Des had a different attitude, and that sort of turned him off. But he said Grieve was right.
Yeah. Okay, Gillian, until next time, maybe next
Au
week.
revoir, everybody.
Thank you.
The spigot is leaving.
See you soon.
See you.
Gillian Ford, everybody, and great to have her on the program today. So we're going to go ahead and continue reading the open letter from this incredible person, Monica Vowless. She was Monica Chin, and this woman was incredible. If you missed yesterday's program, if you begin watching around 1 hour in, if you want to hear just the reading side of it, the first 6 pages, and I'll continue reading today until my voice runs out. As I read, I can't see the comments, but I'll check in every now and again to see what you guys are saying. And just a reminder, no Good News Fellowship tomorrow, unfortunately, but book club is going ahead, and I'll be chatting to Rochelle about how she can get the Zoom link to you guys. And keep reading Whitewashed by Sidney Cleveland. Now, just very quickly, 1919 to 1959 is a particularly suppressive era for Adventists who want to speak up. And prior to that, there seemed to be a voice for people like Canwright and Ballinger, and sure, they were suppressed, ostracized, given the boot, names darkened, etc. But in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, people who spoke up just were dismissed and suppressed and ostracized. And Monica and her husband spoke up, and as I said, very articulately. And when I read this, and I read it, I'm reading it as you guys hear it. I haven't read it before. I've read the Robert Thomas article, which I'll be reading next week, but not Monica's, and it is so fresh. It's I wish I had met this person. She passed away in 1990, and this article was written around 1935. So without further ado, I will keep reading, and then I will come back and read some comments, and then bid you farewell for the rest of the week. So the last, I'll just read the last paragraph and then continue. Therefore, I concluded, says Monica, that those who have the courage to leave the SDA Church are not the only ones who prefer their own convictions of those of the General Conference, even if Mrs. White did say it was God's highest authority upon earth. The only difference is that some have not strength to step out and thus save themselves from the abuse and criticism that those suffer who stand by their convictions by severing their connection. Now, a lot of people, just this is me again, a lot of people wrote to me last night. It was, I think 1,000 people watched yesterday's program within a few hours. So it's definitely hit a struck a chord with people, and a lot of people were positive. Most people were positive and thanking me for sharing this information, and thanking Gillian for sharing this information. But some people said that I was criticizing the Adventist beliefs, and people should be left to just do what they want. I agree. I am not actually challenging the beliefs. My whole point is to point out that the Adventist Church systematically suppresses any voices of dissent, anyone outside the box, anyone who speaks up, anyone who asks questions, way more than most Protestant denominations. For sure, people are going to expect to, get a pushback if they disagree with their church's, main thoughts and teachings. My point is that the Adventist Church has got it down to an art form. And so I am not sitting here saying, oh, these are challenging the belief claims. I'm suggesting that when people challenge the belief claims, they are shut down. That's my point. And then those of you that believe Adventism or don't believe Adventism and have used your own mind and looked at the data and, drawn your own conclusions, great. Go with what you decide. My point is the suppression and the not being allowed to ask the hard questions. And so those who feel I'm bagging the Adventist Church, I'm bagging anyone that tries to stop people's voice from being heard. And the interesting thing about this document, Monica's document, is that here we have, I know the Adventist Church has been skilled at suppressing people, but I really thought that it's the last 45 years since 1980, since Glacier View, that there's been, excessive amounts of systematic suppression. But here we find that in the 30s and the 20s, Monica talks about the 20s, the 1920s, where she met Prescott himself. She met Froome and asked him these questions. This is 90 years, not 45 years. And this era, 1919 to 1959, was particularly suppressive in that there was almost no light being shone, whereas with the modern day social media, they can't keep us quiet anymore. Okay, I will now read and stop talking. Back to her open letter. When I mentioned these facts to one of the worthy pastors in New Zealand, he asked why these men in the USA were not brought to task upon their beliefs. But seeing these changes in doctrine are the beliefs of the leading lights of the denomination, who shall bring them to task? This just shows how the pastors in Australia are behind in the true facts concerning their doctrines. Even Pastor Sharp, and look, I may have read this page already, but that's okay. Even Pastor Sharp cannot understand why the pastors in America do not get hate those who oppose the SDAs on their teaching. Evidently, the trouble is that Pastor Sharp does not know of the true facts now that he himself has come up against opposition by a tract written by my husband dealing with Mrs. Me. Pastor Sharp upholds as a prophetess and the 2,300 days. I've heard it said that he is endeavouring to get information together to write a tract to overthrow my husband's. It is an easy matter to write a tract to criticise another, but full information to overthrow these facts is a different matter. If the General Conference officials cannot overthrow the facts brought against their teachings on the 2,300 days, when it has been brought up against them so strongly in the USA, I cannot see where a pastor in obscurity in New Zealand can produce the information that the General Conference has been looking for all these years. My eyes well open when in America and saw for myself that the leading lights there refused to debate the facts of the 2,300 days. And Mrs. White, even though a £500 reward was offered, and Mrs. White. And now I ask, why have they dropped preaching this doctrine in the USA? My last correspondence from Washington, D.C. reveals the fact that they are cutting this out of the teaching altogether. When attending the colleges there in America, I was also very disappointed in the students. Yeah, I did read this yesterday, sorry, but we're just recapping. At Avondale, there was no future for the students, but the mission fields. And although only a small percentage could go there, all went to school with that aim in view. With such an ambition, these students were far more earnest and enthusiastic than the ones I then found myself amongst in the USA. There was a great lack of spirituality and a marked criticizing antagonism between the students and faculty. I'd always heard the pastors at home tell of the 40,000 young people they had in training in the schools. Now I had the opportunity to see what constituted these 40,000. Instead of being there for a training for the mission field, as I had been led to believe, many were there because they were sent by their parents to be educated, not from any desire of their own. Others went with the hope of a good position in their organized work, while others again found it convenient to go there in order to work their way through to gain training for a position in the world. Only a very few go out to the mission fields, and many that do are unsatisfactory. One girlfriend, whose father was in charge of a large mission field, told me what a difficult task he had in settling disputes and bad feelings among the mission workers, and that some of the wives did nothing all day but read novels. In some cases, it was clearly seen that a cheap trip to the Orient was the aim in view. Those students taking the ministerial course were not among the intelligentsia of the school. Among them were those who had no special liking or talent for the intricate sciences, mechanics, or languages. Hence, the ministerial course was the only one open to them. Several students scoffed at me when I happened to mention my belief in Mrs. White's writings. They laughed me to scorn for believing such rubbish, as they termed it. Some of the young men asked me who I had a pull with to get a job after graduation, for they declared unless you were so-and-so son or daughter or a friend of the family of some important head, you had no chance at all. I was relying on Mrs. White's counsel. Your Saviour will guide you into a position best suited to your talents. And I thought they all did likewise, but much to my surprise, I found this not to be so. Here are a couple of examples. A pastor's just lost where I am. I can see on the screen there's a bit of stuff there. Let me just remove that. I'll just remove the donation QR code. And there we go. Sorry about that. You'll be able to see it a bit more now. Excuse me. A pastor's son who was supposed to be out helping with a church service one Sabbath went to the movies dead. An ordinary student would have been expelled on the spot, and his chances for a job nil for some years. But because he was a pastor's son, he was soon at the head of a mission, writing for the signs of the times, and is now one of the worthy pastors himself. Another pastor in New Zealand said that if his son was not given a position, then he would give up the work himself. These are trivial incidents, no doubt, but the world over, and I've just mentioned them to show how my respect and admiration for an organization I had held up to me as the best example to follow was gradually being weakened. Many times I've heard it said and have been told, don't look at the people and what they do, but keep your eyes on the message. Yes, and if these people really believed their message, they would certainly have more confidence in getting a position without wire pulling and would bring forth different fruit. However, many of them have found that it has a sandy foundation and it cannot stand the storms of opposition. In consequence, they have grown careless and indifferent. And why not apply this same advice in regard to my husband and myself at the present time? We left on the doctrinal points of the message, yet instead of calling attention to the soundness of their own interpretation of the subjects in question, they criticize and scandalize our characters to the people. It would be more excusable if the things they said were true. How could I or anyone else believe they had the truth if they don't even speak the truth of others? After 4 years of being connected with their institutions in America, I longed to get back to Australia, where I was sure the people and pastors were less perverted, more earnest, sincere, and spiritual. Accordingly, in the year 1931, I accepted a position as a teacher on the faculty of the Avondale Missionary College, just down the road here from me, literally a 5-minute bike ride, and it's now called Avondale University. Here I thought I would be working with an earnest band of workers whose sole aim was for the influence of the cause of God with no thought of selfish ambitions. But to my disgust, I found that this idea of wire pulling, as the Americans called it, was not only practiced by students, but that conference workers could also look out for number one, and even without consideration of others. Those listening and watching, have you had that experience in your life as an Adventist or as a former Adventist? Do you recall that kind of nepotism and wire pulling? Let me know in the comments if you have. Give me some examples. It was not only practiced by the students, but that conference workers could also look out for number one, even without consideration of others. With the faculty divided against itself, how could they expect to have a harmonious, united spiritual student body? It was not my desire to have a place in the work if the giving of my position was based on malicious animosity. As for the pastors, I found them much the same as their USA brethren. When they discover that you know something of their errors and deceptions, they act shiftily and direct answer on these questionable doctrines. Much disgusted and disappointed, I came home at the end of that year with a longing desire to be free from all institutions, all professed organizations of religion. I know how she felt, how I longed and prayed for the Lord to send someone along who was a genuine follower of his to help me spiritually and study with me the doctrines of the church that I had questioned. I'd not been home long when I met a young man that had just returned from the mission field, who was a non-denominational Sabbath keeper, earnest, sincere, an intelligent thinker, open to unprejudiced discussion, and ready to study and accept new light if in harmony with Scripture. Unlike myself, he was a great student of prophecy, and I could see that he was just the man I was looking for to study the doctrines I had in question. As he had studied SDA books for a number of years, he knew their doctrines as well as any worker in the field. In fact, some pastors told him that he knew their doctrines as well as any pastor among them. The second week he was home in New Plymouth, which is in New Zealand, he was asked by the SDAs if he would take the church service for them, which he did. He was soon asked to take another, and so on. Everyone had confidence in him, even the district pastor and conference president. Later, he joined the church and he was asked to take the services regularly. This truly shows what confidence they had in his ability, spirituality, and knowledge of the doctrines. It was during this time also that we were married. I told him of the facts that I had come up against in the United States, and he agreed to study out the truth of it all by comparing other writers' comments on Daniel 8:9 with the Bible, reconsidering the teaching of the church with the Bible, weighing the evidence and correctness on both sides. He visited several libraries for the purpose of studying commentaries, histories, and the oldest translations of the Bible, obtaining for himself such standard works as Josephus, History of the Jewish Wars, the Septuagint version, and original Hebrew and Greek with English alterations inserted, and other authentic works. When he was thoroughly convinced that the SDAQ teaching was fault, the only honourable thing to do was to resign. My little note here. Many who do find the teachings at fault don't resign and lead a more, I call them cultural Adventists. They lead more of an existence within Adventism that enjoys Happy Sabbath, haystacks, and hippie Jesus, and contemporary Christian music. And that's okay. But with Adventism, the claim of being, this last people having a special message for these last days, heralding in this message that was so important about the Sabbath and the Sunday laws, vindicating God, to have such a profound message and claim, when you realize that that's perhaps at fault and wrong, I don't know, there must be some cognitive dissonance going on if you stay. It took me about 25 years to slowly disentangle my brain from the indoctrination. So no judgment. Back to her article. He said, I could please myself what I did. He would not interfere if I still wished to remain in the church. However, I felt I had no alternative. I could not stay where I knew there was error, and so I resigned also. After our resignation, I expected the district pastor to call on us and discuss the question with us, although we were convinced that we were right. Still, if we had overlooked any points which proved the contrary, we were quite willing to be put right, as it is not our desire to believe in error, but only to stand by the Bible. Again, I was disappointed in the pastors, as they were the same as their American brethren. There was only one who offered to help us in any way, and he was a returned medical missionary. He came around to prove his claims for Mrs. White, and we gave him a hearing for an hour and 20 minutes. When he suggested that my husband give his objections for not accepting her as a prophetess, after that, he suggested that my husband give his objections for not accepting her as a prophetess, whereupon my husband took a copy of Mrs. White's early writings and began to read a few paragraphs. All went well for some minutes when the doctor interrupted in an attempt to contradict what was written. But when my husband reminded him that Mrs. White saw it in vision, he knew he dare not dispute the matter further, so would not listen any more. My husband said he had not given any of his objections yet, but was only reading plain statements of Mrs. White's. However, the doctor did not want to hear any more, and so 10 minutes was all the hearing we have ever received from the Seventh-day Adventists concerning our resignation. Yeah, once it gets difficult, they don't want to discuss it. That's just me adding my 2 cents there. And that's one of the big things that I have a problem with, is that once you start revising Ellen White and reclaiming her as a devotional, inspirational person, but not necessarily a prophet. Once you start doing that, what stops you from going, oh, but hang on, she said I saw this in vision. But that doesn't seem to be a discussion people want to have. It's too unsettling. It's okay to say, well, she was wrong, but how do you interpret her being wrong when she claimed it was from a vision? Not even the president who married us and who has known me since my first connection with the church has had enough interest in our spiritual welfare to come and reason together, or even express my correspondence, his regret at the step we had taken. Or even to express by correspondence his regret at the step we had taken. Let me know, those watching and listening, in the comments. If you left the Adventist Church, what kind of follow-up did you have? I had pretty much none. Norm Young turned up on my doorstep a few days later and told me that I should reconsider, that the church would benefit from me challenging it from within. Lloyd Grolleman wrote and said, hey, can I come up and pray with you? And one of the secretaries at my church at Avondale wrote and said, we're really going to miss you. And I thought, well, I'll be bumping into you in the grocery store, so I'm not dead. And I had a couple of other messages like that from people that I had to remind I'm not dead. But by and large, there was no communication. Back to her article, Monica Vowless. After resignation, the district pastor refused to discuss these subjects with us. Pastor Sharp was sent down from Auckland to deal with the situation. He was in the town a whole week and, as their usual custom is, he went round to put others against us, but never made it his business to seek us out. So there's another classic Adventist tack: ad hominem, rumour, besmirch, character assassinate. Have you had that happen? If you have left the church, let me know in the comments. I always enjoy reading what you guys have to say. On the Sabbath, he convinced his congregation to vote us off the roll, although he had not seen or even read our letters of resignation himself, let alone have them with him to read to his congregation. He acted on the unreliable source of hearsay only as to why we left the church, knowing nothing of the facts, and on that basis deliberately cast us out. Thus we were treated no differently from our former brethren who have left for the same reasons. On page 76 of the Church, Its Organisation and Discipline, published by the Review and Herald, I read of the 5 steps to apostasy as follows: forming a creed, expressing their faith in man-made phrases instead of adhering to the Word of God. I remember Gillian telling me about her and Des being written up as apostates, and that very first, flies in the face of them being one, because they didn't give up the Word of God. But Adventists love to say, if you leave the Adventist church, you are committing apostasy. Number 2, making that man-made creed a test of fellowship and denouncing all as heretics who would not assent to the exact wording of their creeds. 3, making the creed rule by which all heretics must be tried. Many were thus declared sinners whose faith was more in harmony with the direct statements of the Bible than that of those who declared against them. By the way, you can go to the Adventist. Are you guys still with me? You still watching? You can go to, I'll just bring it up on the screen here, Truth or Fables, and look up Monica Vowless, Vowless, if you'd like to read up on so many things, but also this particular topic. 4, constituting a tribunal for the trial of the heretics and excluding from their fellowship all who would not assent to their creeds, not content to debar such from church privileges. In this world, they declared them subjects for the lake of fire. Having thus kindled a hatred in their own hearts against all who did not conform to their creeds, they next invoked and obtained the aid of the civil power to torture and kill with sword, with hunger, with flame, and with beasts of the earth, those who they had declared unfit to remain in the world. The whole 5 applies to the apostate religion. That's interesting. Of the Seventh-day Adventists. That's interesting. So in their very words, they condemn themselves without realizing it. Wow. The whole 5 applies to the apostate religion of Seventh-day Adventists. As they cannot resort to the civil power in this country, they use their own power of scandal and abuse. It would be useless for me to attempt to answer all the rumors that are spread abroad against us, but I am sure after a reading of the foregoing experiences, no one could still believe that my husband took me out of the church. Now, they say that my husband is an ignorant man, but he was not too ignorant to preach for them, and he is evidently too well informed for them to enter into a discussion with him. He is a self-educated man and more well-informed on general topics than any SDA pastor I have ever met. Moses was 40 years unlearning all the modern education of the Egyptians before God could educate and use him. Christ himself was a carpenter himself, and he chose unlearned fishermen to become the Christian church. It was the wise, learned Pharisees and professed churchmen of his day who denounced him as an impostor, saying he hath a devil. Yet he was the Son of the God they professed to worship. And still in our day, we find professing churchmen denouncing innocent disciples. Speaking of William Miller in Great Controversy, page 208, Mrs. White says, though he had little of the learning of the schools, he became wise because he connected himself with the source of wisdom. Without passion or excitement, he tested all theories and doctrines by the word of God, and his sound reasoning and intimate knowledge of the scriptures enabled him to refute error and expose falsehood. Bit of irony there. So they can believe in an uneducated man if it suits them. Because my husband has enough energy and knowledge to make his own independence, they must again abuse him behind his back to others, putting down his earnings to what little I have withdrawn from their savings bank. If we were not an independent worker, would he not have accepted the offer of free tuition in their schools? No, he is not the man to sell his conscience for the sake of an easy living. No doubt it is much to the advantage of the SDA conference to have its members place their banking accounts in their conference bank. I've seen and know this by experience. They do not worry about those who have no banking account behind them, but it pays to keep in which those who have to pay off church debts, etc. For they know full well how much easier it is to induce rings and sums toward worthy students' tuitions from those who have an account than from those who have not. With £300 in cash for my school fees, while with them, and with offerings and pledges, the giving of a motor car for one pastor's use, they collected from me over £1,000, leaving me but little left. All this was given willingly as unto the Lord, and no mention would have been made of it here if they had not circulated false reports about my husband. The trouble is I withdrew from them too soon. If I were there a little longer with their plea of the depression, they might have obtained what little I had left themselves. It is strange that the same pastor who cast us out came down from Auckland to lodge with my mother and sister, coming in between them and myself. I wonder if he were thinking that in time I might have opened their eyes to all the falseness of their doctrines, and in the end caused them both to withdraw their accounts from the conference banks also. That's interesting. They tax and tithe their members to the utmost and then turn around and boast that their members pay in more to missions than members belonging to any other church. It is common practice to have charts on the wall to entice the last halfpenny. Here are a few verses and a chorus of one of their hymns that they've sung in their Sabbath schools. God hears the dimes drop, which come from hearts so true. Because he hears their cheerful ring, he'll hear the dollars too. The dollars too, the dollars too. He'll hear the dollars too. Because he hears the nickels, dimes, he'll hear the dollars too. God knows the ones who love to give. Each wears a happy look. Their names are precious unto him. They're written in his book. I haven't heard that one before. But yeah, there's a bit of a sales funnel. Adventism is almost like a multi-level marketing machine, cooperation. Therefore, it is easily seen that the golden calf still plays a big part in this world. At harvest, in gathering time during the year, they go around the other churches, members, to try and get help for their missions. Yet their prophetess calls these Protestant churches Babylon fallen, the doomed churches. She calls their ministers false shepherds. Their prayers, useless prayers. Sunday keepers have the mark of the beast, and many more such uncharitable names and sayings. All these are endorsed by every SDA, for these names are given by Mrs. E.G. White, and every member has to accept her writings as of divine origin. Any member not accepting her writings is cast out. When they speak of my husband, so I cannot help thinking that they must be measuring him by their own sack when I call to mind many things I know of. For instance, I shall just state some facts concerning the Hurd case, which appeared in all 5 of the leading Washington newspapers. This is still pending in the United States. Mr. Hurd was a very loyal Adventist, a rich Iowa farmer. In later life, he sold his farm and went to sell Adventist literature. In his old age, he went to the Iowa sanitarium for treatment. He disappeared from the sanitarium without the knowledge of any of the members of his family. SDAs had taken him to Tacoma Park. He placed all his money in the hands of the General Conference, which is estimated to be up to $80,000. Now, this is $80,000 back in the day. Imagine how much that's today. And when the heirs tried to locate him, they could not get any information whatsoever from headquarters. Before he died, they had the papers all fixed up so that his entire holdings would go to the denomination. When the heirs finally found out that he had given all of his property over to the denomination, they brought suit against the General Conference to reclaim the money he had deposited with them. He left a widow and 8 children, and right now the SDAs have their famous standing Catholic attorney, Frank Hogan, who was in their employ for 10 years before Mrs. White died, fighting the case for them. This is me, again, not the actual article, but I think I mentioned a few times that I met Neil Wilson, maybe 1986, 87-ish, 88, I don't know, late 80s, in New Zealand when I was teaching there at the Adventist school. And he came to one of the, I think all the teachers gathered together at the conference office for a worship. And I remember asking the question. It was only 7 or 8 of us. It was a small little group. There he was. Very interesting person, very likable, had a lot of charisma about him. Very kind of very tall and regal gentleman with an air of positive confidence. I didn't find him off-putting at all. I thought he was a very interesting person. And I said, how did he feel about the fact that the church was growing outside of the North American division, but decreasing in numbers in Australia and New Zealand, but growing elsewhere, so that overall it looked like it was growing but dying in some parts of the world. I don't remember his answer. I think there was a nod of disapproval from the conference president as he looked across, wondering who this whippersnapper was asking these kind of questions of the worldwide GC president. But I remember he also was talking about how if the church needed money, he said, I could call someone right now on the phone and I could get $1 million within 10 minutes. If I called these people that are very wealthy, and if we needed some money, I could call them up and they would give that money. So not only does the Adventist Church have the ability to get this kind of money at will, they have a systematic way of getting people to just pay quite a lot anyway. And then they seem to have this ability to get people that are older and on retirement to hand over all their money. Have you had experiences with the Adventist Church and money? Let me know in the comments. Back to the article. They make the excuse that they did not know at first that Frank Hogan was a Roman Catholic. But if that were true, then there was an excellent chance of their prophetess to show her colours to advantage and inform them. Yes. If she could reveal the secret sins of a brother in the church, why not this? Seeing they are on such intimate terms with the Catholics, no wonder they put the following editorial in one of their papers. Our Catholic brothers, we have many friends among the individual Catholics, and our relations with them in social, business, and professional contacts have been the most harmonious. We believe there is a feeling between us of mutual respect and fair consideration of the other's viewpoints. There is much about Catholicism we to admire, and we are free to say so. Their number, entitled The Adherents of the Roman Church to a Respectful Hearing and More Than Tolerant. The Catholic system of church organization is most orderly and efficient. Its educational system of the best, its institutions, its missions, its charities, its prestige, its splendor, its influence all excite our wonder, even our admiration. We hate bigotry and intolerance and make no tirades against Catholics. We hurl no offensive epithets and use no insulting terms. This is in The Watchman, January 1929. Yes, the world wondered after the beast, and naturally so, the daughter. This is now what Adventists say behind the scenes. Revelation 7:5. On the other hand, they go and publish in their own tracts and papers that the Pope is the beast. Revelation 13:18. Evidently, it is a case of not letting the left hand know what the right hand doeth. They also criticize us for corresponding with and receiving information from late elders of high standing in the denomination, but who have now left apostasy. I sought in vain for correct information from their present-day elders, and they also evaded my questions, and I gained no satisfaction. And so who can blame us for seeking information from men who had ample opportunity to know and do know the facts? And who would not sear their conscience for a mess of pottage? I shall now give a list of men who have held prominent positions in the denomination and who have stepped out of the great web of false deceptions of the Seventh-day Adventists. And she adds, an asterisk denotes those who, like my husband, have been impressed with the duty of exposing their falseness. So I'll read where she includes that. So these are people that had held prominent positions and have stepped out of the great web of false deceptions. Elders J.B. Cook, a pioneer who started with the movement. B.F. Snook, once very prominent. Moses Hull, one of the ablest speakers they ever had. Shortridge, a very talented minister. So this is not just people in New Zealand. This is of the whole denomination and movement. Hall, very prominent in the work. Stevenson, very prominent in the work. J.B. Frisbee, a most efficient preacher for years. A.B. Ogden, an editor and one of the main leaders. D.B. Oviatt, conference president for many years. J.F. Ballinger, one of SDA's best revivalists, and he gets an asterisk for also going ahead and speaking out against this. So there's J.F. Ballinger, A.F. Ballinger, superintendent of Ireland and a prominent minister for 50 years. He gets the asterisk as well. Church school superintendent, secretary of missionary volunteers, superintendent of Sabbath schools, member of Fernando School Board, Young People's Sabbath School Committee, pioneer of Paradise Valley Sanitarium. Besides being a successful evangelist, raising many churches, even asked to conduct 10 efforts for having resigned. L.R. Conradi, father of Europe. W.W. Fletcher, conference president and teacher. Hiram Edson, noted pioneer. W. Rhodes, noted pioneer. A.T. Jones, their most prominent historian and editor. He gets an asterisk, so does Fletcher and Conradi. E.J. Wagner, editor of the Review and Herald. M.E. Kellogg, editor of Youth's Instructor and associate editor of the Review and Herald. John Colvord, editor and translator. L.C. Chrysler, conference president. W.A. Colcord, their most prominent writer, with an asterisk. W.H. Littlejohn, great defender of the dayline question, now opposes them on the same theory. Asterisk. Asterisk for D.M. Canwright, woohoo! One of the very highest and strongest of their teachers, being the best debtor during the last 15 years that he was with them, a great organizer and who held all the highest positions of the denomination, including being one of the committee of 3 for General Conference for many years. F.E. Belden, most famous amongst them, it was through his resignation that Christ in Song was discontinued, for he withdrew his copyrights. That's right. And he gets an asterisk too. Belden. Is he related to Ellen as well, I think? But he wrote lots of Adventist hymns. And then she's got a list. Premble, Birkenhoff, Reynold, Blanchard, T.J. Butler, Howard, Haynes, Fuller, Frank, Ramrod, Day, H.W. Ball, Good Enough, Bunch, Crozier, Tchaikovsky, Case, Ranmer, Philip Strong, Rosquet, Whitelaw, A.C. Russell, E.P. Daniels, R.S. Owen. That was E.P. Daniels, by the way. H.E. Carver, Cassidy, A.C. Long, Birkenhoff, and I'll just quickly read the list because it's part of this document and my wanting to ensure that these people of the 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s aren't forgotten, because you know if you look pre-1919 Adventism, you can Google up most names and up it'll come. You can look post-1959 and up the names come. This era of 1919 to 1959 has many, many people that were so suppressed, shunned, and ostracized. You can't find anything on them online anywhere. You have to look really hard. Gillian Ford's done a great job of really digging deep. So anyway, I want to just make sure these names are out there. And that's why I'm reading Monica's story. And so there's professors, Brownsberger, McLean, Vasey, Ramsey. There's doctors, Lee, Lay, Russell, M.G. Kellogg, Sprague, Fairfield, Smith, J.H. Kellogg, C. Stewart. And this is by no means a full list, but only some of the most prominent men. As the SDA conference is publishing books against the influence left behind by the late D.M. Canright, I feel it my duty to state some facts regarding this Christian man whom the SDAs abused so bitterly. I've done some shows on him, and remember the lady that wrote Canright's I Was Canright, Terry. I've got some great shows on that as well. And we even have a Facebook group on Canright as well, if you'd like to find that and join. We have some discussions about Canright there. He was kind of the first guy, really, that was of prominence that wrote against the errors, wrote and exposed the errors of Adventism, wrote against Ellen White. And Monica continues, this man had many of the highest positions in the denomination for many years, and when he started to find out their covered up errors, he ceased to preach until he became more acquainted with the facts. During this time, many of the leaders pleaded with him to come back, covering up and concealing the true facts from him. He then took up his preaching again and apologized for the stand he took against them. Such instances as this happened again and again, as he was charitably disposed towards his former brethren and overlooked his suspicions of their crookedness. He even complied with their wishes to publish a tract renouncing his suspicions. But again, as he worked with them, he witnessed churches disbanded through trouble caused by Elder White and his wife wherever they went. Their overbearing spirit of oppression, criticism, and distrust of fellow workers' resention caused him to resolve to sever his connection with them for good. When he was contemplating this step, Mrs. White sent him a testimony urging him to take the presidency of a conference for another year, declaring that he was just the man for the position. 2 weeks later, when he had resigned, she sent him a long revelation denouncing him, a child of the devil, one of the most wicked of men, although only 2 weeks before he was fit for a conference president. The widespreadness against this man pointedly shows the hatred they have for one who has so successfully opposed them by his writings, disclosing to the world the effectual camouflage of well-established error. One book he wrote in 1889 was entitled Seventh-day Adventism Rest. Still available to this day, by the way. Those watching and listening, go and get a copy. In which he endeavored to use other churches' arguments to abolish the Sabbath. Seventh-day Adventists have always used this against D.M. Canright in an endeavor to convince their congregations that he was in the wrong all through. But they do not take up any other subjects that he exposed them in, such as Mrs. White and her money-making testimonies. In 1919, he wrote his last book, The Life of Mrs. E.G. White, which I have right here. I've got the other one also behind me. Another fantastic book, exposing the facts about her visions and testimonies in a most striking manner. Interesting that this is 1919 that this came out, and then complete blanket of suppression, 1919 to 1959. This book has never been answered by any publication from the SDAs, that it is unanswerable. And she was writing this in 1935. I haven't seen any effective rebuttal to this book to this day, 90 years later. It should be read by all SDAs and any who have relations in the SDA church. So there's a plug from 1935. Here's a plug from 2025. I also highly recommend that you go and grab this book. And the one I mentioned earlier by Ron Numbers. The third edition is available. Sadly, we lost Ron last year, I think. But both those books are a must read. Knowing the widespread influence these books have had, the General Conference has again tried to check their influence by Commissioner Elder W.H. Branson to write a book answering Canwright's book, Seventh-day Adventism Renounced. That's interesting. So knowing the widespread... Wasn't Branson, didn't Gillian mention that Branson was on Numbers' grandfather or some connection there? And he commissioned to have a book answering Canwright's book, Seventh-day Adventism Renounced. This volume contains 319 pages entitled Reply to Canwright. Now, that's the first book, not the 1919 one that I just held up. This is the 1889 book. It has 319 pages entitled Reply to Canwright, dated 1933. This brave elder deals with a book put out as far back as 1889, the book in which Canwright has tried to abolish the Sabbath. But the great and powerful book, The Life of Mrs. E.G. White, of 280 pages, written by Ken in 1919, is severely left alone. Why? Because the facts are unanswerable. That is why I say everyone should read it. It's so funny that here are her words from 1935. I'm reading them 90 years later. I've read this book a couple of times, but she has inspired me to go and read it this afternoon. I'm gonna get it back. It's not too thick, but isn't that interesting? 90 years ago, she said, the facts of this book are unanswerable. That is why I say everyone should read it. Thank you, Monica. You've inspired me to read it again. However, returning to Elder Branson's book, I may state that there are 18 chapters, 12 of which are solely devoted to Canwright's attitude to the Sabbath, one chapter in dealing with the sanctuary and Day of Atonement, and one to the work of Mrs. White. Such weakness. One chapter in defense of Mrs. White against hundreds of pages written against her. No wonder it's mentioned in the book Life of Mrs. E.G. White by Canwright. And what need was there for another book covering the questions of the Sabbath and nature of man, seeing a publication, Answers to Objections, put out just last year, dealt so ably with them? That's interesting. Several weeks before Canwright died, the report was circulated among the church members that he was dead and died without hope of eternal life. When he did die, several weeks later, another report followed that his last words were, "I die a lost man." His daughter, in whose home he died, emphatically denies these reports. In fact, his friends have urged her to take suit against the denomination for the things said against him, but her Christian charitableness forbade her. That's disgusting. He was always held in high esteem right up till his death by the Baptist Church, which he joined, and 4 Baptist ministers, 4, officiated at his funeral. I know that these reports were circulated and are still believed, for I distinctly remember a Bible teacher in one of the colleges I attended in America impressing on our youthful minds that the terrible end of this man who dared to oppose the spirit of prophecy. I've heard things said about Des Ford like that too. They can't just refute the criticism. They have to attack the person. Now I have the facts. For some friends of his who were also well acquainted with the daughter wrote to my husband recently. Wow, I didn't know that. And speaking of Canwright, said he died of Christian hope. He made no deathbed recantation, and he wrote his last book from a sense of duty. He felt that he owed the facts it contained to the Christian world, facts that the Seventh-day Adventist leaders had been trying to hide and suppress for so many years. It was Mr. Canwright's misfortune to break his leg a couple of years before his death. The SDAs advertised among themselves that this affliction was a judgment upon him from heaven. But the SDAs never say it was a similar judgment upon Mrs. E.G. White when she fell and broke her hip, which failed to heal and resulted in her death. If one affliction was divine judgment, it follows that the other must have been also. One only needs to read a copy of Mrs. E.G. White's will to understand why these deceptions are still practiced. For the full rights of such books, The Great Controversy, Desire of Ages, Acts of the Apostles, Early Writings, the Testimonies, Volume 1 to 9, etc., were left to some of the present-day leaders. And as her writings and testimony making proposition in the beginning, so they are to this day. And I'll say that 90 years later from Monica writing this, they are to this day as well. Some, am I right, 90 years? 1935 to 25? My math's bad. Some books, such as The Coming King, Spiritual Gifts, Volume 1 to 4, etc., were left to another elder who has since fallen into disrepute, with the result that such books have gone out of print. Therefore, we can see why these great changes, omitting errors, are in her books. If the errors can be omitted, they can still sell them. Like all the pages taken out of the Why there is 100 pages taken out of Volume 1, pages altered in Desire of Ages, Great Controversy, etc., all for the sake of the golden calf. We are well aware that the leaders claim to be successful in their propaganda because they have a so-called spirit of prophecy. But the Russellites started later and are now counted to be over 1 million followers. What about the Mormons, the Christian Scientists, and other sects? Nothing is surer of success than a religious cause which has a false prophet at its head. The Lord has warned his people on this point, 1 Kings 22:21 and verse 22. Of all the methods proposed by Satan, this one has proved the most successful. How many pages does this have? I was thinking it was a small read, but we're at page 16. Oh my goodness, there's 51 pages to go. So what we might do is, I'll check if anyone is still watching, is I'll read one more page, and then I'm going to invite you to go and read the rest yourself at Truth or Fables. I will do the same when I read Robert some of his. I will read part 1 of his and then encourage you to go to truthorfables.com and read the rest. Are you guys still with me? I think for some of you are. That's good to see. Oh, yeah, that's great. And I'll come back and just read a couple of those before we say farewell today. But I'll just read this one more page, and then, I'm not going to read all 51. I did. For some reason, I thought there were only 17 pages. But as Gillian mentioned earlier, she is putting this all into a pamphlet. There'll be this, Robert's work, Grieve, some others, and we'll be making it available via a PDF. So, keep your ear to the ground. So one more page, and then we'll have a chat and look at some of the comments and questions, and then I'll say farewell for today. I have now, since my resign, been a far happier woman than I was before. That's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because people often say that when they leave the church, and I don't want to judge people who stay and are happy and they love their cultural church. But for me, and for a lot of you guys that have left, and if you agree, let me know in the comments. There seems to be something lighter. Life's still hard, challenges, ups and downs like crazy. I'm just as flawed a human as I ever was. But like Monica says, I have now, since my resigning, been a far happier person than I was before. For 2 or 3 years previous to my resignation, I did not enjoy a good experience spiritually. I had no sin in my life unconfessed that I knew of, yet I felt separated from God, and that for some reason I was not pleasing the Lord. Since my resignation, this burden of guilt is lifted. I am free once more. I'm sure it was because I was shutting my eyes to truth. But it was truth so artfully covered up by the sophistries of men that I'd been led to believe through them that it was error and not truth. There are always two sides to every question. Unbiased mind searches both sides for the truth. I had someone say to me this morning in a message, I just don't want to even look into this stuff. Yeah, the church has got its flaws, and but so does every church, and I just don't want to look into this stuff. And Monica's saying there was always two sides, and the unbiased mind searches both sides for the truth. But a lot of people just want to keep their head in the sand. And yeah, I don't know. I constantly ponder that notion of, I don't mind. I've probably got my head in the sand with lots of things as well. I'm not seeking some kind of perfect understanding of anything. But my point is that you should be allowed to ask questions, challenge movements, challenge people's beliefs, particularly when the claims are so bold. God has given us all intelligence with which to search his word, and we should not trust to the pastor's interpretation of the word altogether. Christ's promise is, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. Yes, free from the bondage of self-righteousness and formality, free from human creeds and theoretical idealism. When the Jews sought to condemn Jesus, did not Nicodemus interpose with the question, doth our Lord judge any man before it hear him and know what he doeth? And later, when the Jews sought to condemn Paul without a hearing, did not Festus object, saying, it is not the manner of the Romans to deliver a man to die before he which is accused have the accusers face to face and have the license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him? Some have asked me if I thought my husband was doing the right thing in opposing the SDAs. I say yes, he is doing right and a good missionary work by opposing them. And for my reasons, I give the following. Pastor Spicer, once General Conference President, said that 3/4 of all who leave the SDA denomination give up on religion altogether, as there is 19,000 leaving the church out of every 20,000 who joins them. Then there is a large number giving up all religion. Now that's an interesting statistic there from the 30s. There's 19,000 leaving the church out of every 20,000 who joins, which seems to be similar to today. By the way, I spoke to Jim from Academy Apologia this morning via email. I had lots of conversations with people via email and messenger the last 24 hours. And he's coming on the show hopefully next week or the week after to talk about Adventist statistics and how inaccurate they are. So keep an eye out for that. I'll be letting you all know when that happens very soon. SDAs boast of there being a missionary body, but if the true facts are analysed, we find it is not so. There are very, very few places they have gone to as pioneer missionaries. Their converts are mostly taken out of already established missions and churches. If we just take the example shown by the following, we see this carried out to the letter. I've just read in one of their mission reports of the progress of a certain mission started in a well-established town of many churches. The pastor states that when he went there first, there were only 15 members in his church, but now he says he has 45. not his members, but those from other churches coming along to hear the message of SDAs. This is the same method used the world over. After these Christian people join them, they gradually become entangled in the web of false doctrine and subtle deception. And gradually, the false doctrines of Mrs. White's inspiration are woven in until they begin to feel that they dare not say anything against her, for fear they would be speaking against the Holy Spirit. Such is the spell the pastors have cast over them. Former Adventists, let me know in the comments if you feel that you were under that spell. After a period of time, the more earnest seekers after truth gradually become acquainted with these errors and deceptions and finally leave with disgust, saying that if that is religion, then they do not want any more of it. Another good friend wrote to me and pretty much said the same thing last night or this morning. And I'm pretty sure he's watching today. I totally get it. This is kind of like, some of this quagmire of Adventist theology is disgusting. And it's hard to even look into these kind of conversations and take them on board. But I'm happy to be in the mix. I'll take one on the chin so that we can get this information out there. And I do thank everybody for your support. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. And so some give up altogether. Now, these people who have joined them from other churches must have been Christians, or else they would not have been in any of the churches at all. But now, seeing the falsity of what they at first believed to be truth, they go to the other extreme, that of giving up all religion, losing therefore their hope, the hope of all Christian people's salvation. Oh, actually, no, this is coming up to the end of the article. The rest is more biographical details. Oh, yeah, no. So we are nearly finished. Yeah, only a couple of paragraphs left. How much better would it have been if they had remained in their former churches? SDAs were a body of people, although containing much error and deception, who went around helping the lost and fallen, giving them hope and comfort, pointing them to Christ. Then it would have been a different matter. But I'm sorry to say such is not the case. And so it is missionary work to prevent others from joining this organization, for it is saving so that's why she's saying her husband's work is important. It's like a missionary work to prevent others from joining this organization, for it is saving a great percentage from being lost, from turning forever from Christ. Now they abuse my husband for putting the facts before the people that they cannot deny. They endeavor to do their best to break his character down, anything to stop others from hearing him. This is their only defense. And this coming up next is the biography. You can see it a bit on the screen there. Her maiden name was Monica Adelaide Ching. She was born in 1905 and died in 1990. She died in New Zealand. It's so interesting. Like I would been in. She lived in New Zealand, Taranaki, maybe. In 1990, I was living in New Zealand in 1986 through to 1990. I sang in Taranaki. I sang all over the place there. Wouldn't it be funny if I had actually crossed paths with her at some point? I was in New Zealand in the 70s as well. And this is work here that I think Gillian has compiled. I'm not sure. So there's a lot of information there that people can go on. Some fantastic stuff. Here's some information about Robert. He was born in 1902. I'm not sure when he died. 1940 was it, or 39 something? So he didn't live as long. I can't find any photos of them. Oh, yeah. So this is what I'm going to read next week. This is the Have You Seen the White Elephant of Seventh-day Adventism? And so we've heard that title before with one of my guests. So, yeah, look, we will, yeah. So I have read all of Monica's article there, and I'm looking forward to making a lot of that available to you guys when Gillian has finished the rest of this pamphlet, I think she calls it. And yeah, so I'm just going to come back and read a couple of things here. As I said, thank you everybody for donations that have come through. $20 this week. Appreciate that. It all helps. And if anyone has a few coins they'd like to throw my way, you can scan the QR code up there, or just go to paypal.me/Peter Dixon Music. Some people have asked, is there another way to pay me? If you're in Australia, I can give you my bank details. And I'm also setting up, well, I've already set it up ages ago, a Patreon page where I will be, is a way for people to pay a variety of ways. PayPal, credit card, Stripe, is it? Something like that. Direct bank, etc., etc. So thank you. And as I said, I try and be very transparent, about any money I get coming in. I have expenses to keep this channel going. I keep forgetting how much. It's like somewhere between $100 and $150 a month. And yeah, already this month has been paid for almost exactly. Thank you. And the money that came through this week, $20 so far. Appreciate that. That'll go towards September. My dad turns 93 next month in September 15 or 16. Okay, let's have a look at some of the comments. I won't go too far back. Oh, I'm really glad we got to read all of Monica. What an incredible person. Wow. Monica Vowless. Amazing. Incredible. Imagine how many creative, bright, talented people have wasted their years on Adventism. Many have enjoyed it, of course, culturally. But there's a way it kind of uses you it's great as long as you don't question anything. But as soon as you're a creative, questioning kind of person, it's just constant grind. I always loved my audience, playing music to conservatives and liberals and every kind of Adventist. I loved it. I'm not complaining about my music connection at all. But every weekend I was challenged. You're tapping your foot, not by the main bulk of people, but there was always a contingent that would take me aside afterwards and call me a tool of Satan, or did I have the devil in me because I was tapping my feet, or on and on. And it pushed me into a kind of perhaps a watered down version of myself, where I was just eventually just having fun family country nights, which I loved, absolutely loved. But if I wanted to explore some other styles, that was axed. And I loved worship music and whatnot. Okay, so let's look at some comments. Yes, thank you. Angela mentioned that it was Carrie Johnson and I was Can Wright's secretary. It just escaped my mind there for a moment, and a load of rubbish. And MC has mentioned at some point there were 50 watching live on YouTube, which is actually really good. We go to a few platforms, but today Facebook and YouTube. Let's just do a little check of the likes there. It's very important that you guys... Only 24 likes. What? Yeah, come on. Lean forward. I'm going to check in 2 minutes. I want to see if those numbers have gone up. 24, 50 watching on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook, please lean forward and click the like there. EJ Thunder is watching. How are you going, EJ? We've got to get you back on the show. Very dynamic individual, and always shares incredible material. So shoot me a message, Thunder. Let's get you back. That'd be awesome. So yeah, I'm going to check in 2 minutes. The number is 24. 50 people watching. And even Stephen Beagles, Can Wright's secretary, was fake news. And Cindy Lou says, I prefer YouTube to Facebook for Peter's programs. Thank you, Cindy Lou. Look, the downside with Facebook is they've changed so much. They delete the videos. They don't share them in the algorithms. Sometimes there might be 5 people watching. And if you engage in dialogue there, I can't bring it up on the screen. And like I said, every 30 days, they delete every live video. And humbled by force, I'm one of those happier people. Trail rider, I am so much happier. And Carl, how are you, Carl? We had an interesting exchange this week, I think, didn't we? YouTube. Yeah, YouTube is the growing SDAQ&A force and community. And Trail Rider points out, yeah, it's a much better platform for growing a channel, that's for sure. Facebook used to be, it was fantastic. And we still have 3,000 members over in the Facebook group. Still wonderful connection there. We've got over 9,000 members altogether on different platforms. And John writes, interesting read. It sounds like it was written in 2025, doesn't it? Absolutely incredible. The way she wrote as well. And look, when I read next week the her husband Robert's material, it's the same. It's as fresh as ever. Incredible. And, 90 years ago. It's just mind-blowing. And they're just masters of suppression and ostracism. Barry writes, walking into an Adventist church, you have to leave your brain outside with a lobotomy performed on it. Oh, this is sad. Humbled by force, my mom died while being at odds with me over my church. It's not right. Adventism has a very subtle form of shunning. It's not as obvious as the JWs, but I experience it a lot. Oh, you're still talking about this stuff, are you, Pete? Oh, you did, the church gave you so much and now you're ripping it to bits. No, just asking questions. And MC, correct. Good to see you, Malcolm. Love your music. Yes, that's what's great about the community, that you guys have helped me build here. We get to ask these questions and chat. Sometimes I know that when I put the material out into Facebook, and particularly into Facebook Voice, SDA People's Voice, which I started many years ago as well as SDAQ&A on Facebook, I get such criticism. Sometimes I think I might just do YouTube today. There's a lot more formers that watch on YouTube. Hey, let's get the subscriptions up too. I'm going to go back and have a look in a minute, and I'm going to see how many likes are there. And and look, if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, just lean forward and subscribe. I want to get to 4,000 subscribers by Christmas. Someone's just made a donation. Thank you very much. I'll report on that next week. I'll give you all an accurate account. Just reading the comments. That's why there's a bit of silence there if you're listening on the podcast. And, you know, like, I know that all religions and movements and denominations suppress people and ostracize. It's a human condition, isn't it? You know, we're all pretty stupid, really. we get our backs up if someone disagrees with us. And yes, Barb writes, love Jim's show. Fantastic guy. I got to meet him in person February 2024 when I was over there at the former Adventist convention or whatever they call it. And I tell you what, he is a charismatic guy. Love him. Stephen Hicks. How are you, Stephen? Brent? Peter, how come Dr. Ford read Mrs. White's books like he was supposed to, yet they fired him? Yeah, well, I think because he said she was wrong about the 2,300 days and the IJ and the sanctuary. He basically loved Ellen White as a devotional writer and inspirational human. I think, and Gillian can correct me, I think until the day he died. But once you put in there that she was wrong about those things, he was able to go, well, she was wrong. But the church knows that a lot of people then also say, but wasn't she told that in vision? Did God get it wrong? And that's when the trouble starts. And yeah, Gillian will be on next week when I read the Robert Vowless stuff. And that's interesting. Trail Rider writes, I agree. I kind of wish I'd never become an Adventist. And yeah, Jane writes, unfortunately, I was born into it. Me too. I was 5th generation. Didn't leave till I was 54. I'm not sure if you're willing to leave the name Adventist in your name, you're willing to be associated with the SDA. I don't think you're referring to me having SDA in the name of this. It's SDAQ&A, a former Adventist looking in from the outside, revealing Adventism one conversation at a time. Yes, and MC writes, Peter has done some music with musicians playing various instruments from India, tablas and sitars, etc. I certainly have. I get into a lot of trouble over that album, though, Malcolm, because I sought and sang it in their language and chose lyrics that were about worshipping God, humbling yourself to God, having gratitude for God. But yeah, people don't like you singing in another language. Can't do that. Who else related a bit to what Monica was saying, that a lot of Adventists, when they leave, they do leave altogether and become quite agnostic? That certainly was my story, and that's why I think I've mentioned a million times I've clung to, as I was falling off the rungs, I grabbed that last one, Jesus' teachings from the 4 Gospels. And now I'm climbing back up. And Good News Fellowship really helps me with that. I love it. I love our Good News Fellowship, which is not on tomorrow. But please go over to our new channel. That's where we're going to go live. And watch a show tomorrow. Watch one of the shows you've missed out. Go down, check out one of the shows you might have missed. There's some earlier ones there when we were Voice Life Fellowship. Have a little bit more of a Adventist gospel vibe, but now we're full on gospel. So go over there, YouTube at Gospel Good News Fellowship, and we will be back in the saddle next week. And yeah, we'll wrap it up in a minute. Yeah, Trail Riders mentioned that she doesn't like PayPal, so something else would be nice. I'm hoping by next week to have some other options. Leanne writes, thank you, Peter. You're the best. I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And Humbled by Force writes, we should live each day like we may not live tomorrow. That is sufficient. I agree. In fact, I've gotten so good at living in the moment that I have real trouble planning for tomorrow. And yesterday's gone. I don't even stress about it. But it makes me feel like I'm a little bit like I've got some kind of dementia. Because, yeah, yesterday's gone. Boy, I'm enjoying today. Tomorrow, who knows what's going to happen. And Jude writes, thank you, Peter. Thank you. Thank you, Jude. Leanna writes, let's keep supporting this channel. Thank you. And thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I don't mind, honestly. If I just break even, that's fine. But it does cost me $150 a month. Not counting time that I put in, but yeah. If I can just get the $150 a month, I'm happy. Gospel Adventist writes, hey, Stephen, I'm loving all your AI artwork. By the way, we will all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. Well, that's a whole other topic, isn't it? The sheep go one way, the goats go the other. I think the judgment's already occurred for those that are believers, and we are on the good side. And MC writes, yeah, you're hypnotizing your audience. I should play one of the tunes, shouldn't I, Malcolm? Oh dear, I'd be in trouble. They're just gospel. They're just words of appreciation and love for the divine, but sung in Hindi. And I saw it as a really great way to kind of share that kind of concept to a whole other audience. And interestingly, one of the songs went to #1 on the iTunes charts a few years back. So it did have an impact, but a lot of Adventists heard it and said, "What are you doing? I can't understand what the words are." But hey, it went to #1 on iTunes and in the New Age category, and I was pleased that those themes of divine, sacred worship were just totally carried into a whole audience that many didn't even speak English. Isn't that terrible that I would hesitate playing it to people on this channel? Okay, so wow, thank you. There's lots of great comments. And Carl writes, Ellen got her 2,300 days in iGeometry directly from Mariah Smith. Yes, but she then validated it from God. And Stephen writes, well, she didn't always understand her visions correctly. Yeah, but in the cases where she did, she went to her grave saying the IJ and the 2,300 days was correct, and God had told her. She got that one correctly interpreted, and this is a message to share with people, and those dates are wrong. Wow, I'm amazed how many people are... Oh, yeah, cool. Yeah, that's what I thought, humbled by force. And now that I know Stephen Beagle's Gospel Adventist better, and I would say we're friends. I think Stephen has a way to draw everything Adventist into his belief of Gospel Adventism. I can't do it, and he and I disagree. And yeah, thanks, humbled by force. Yeah, I know you weren't talking about me. I was just clarifying. Gave me an opportunity to give the subtitle, SDAQ&A, a former Adventist looking in from the outside, revealing Adventism one conversation at a time. I should bring that across the screen, but humbled by force, totally. That's totally what I was thinking. I just gave me an opportunity to say that. Yeah. So as I said, tomorrow is my 40th anniversary of graduating from Avondale. The first time. I went back later to complete an MA in counselling, and I didn't finish the final semester. I went off playing music and never went back. I was this close, 3 months away from having an MA in counselling, which I could have then done a PhD on Glacier View. That would never be the case now, unless it's an honorary one. So that's why there is no Good News Fellowship tomorrow. But please go to the channel I mentioned earlier, Good News Fellowship. Just go to YouTube and type in @Gospel Good News Fellowship, and you will find it there. And there's plenty of videos you guys can watch tomorrow. Book club is going ahead, and Rochelle will send the link into Facebook. and also into our other group. We've got another group that I started years ago called Leaving Adventism, just a small group where people chat. So yeah, congratulations on the 40th. Yeah, you don't have to do much. You just keep living, and you can hit all these reunion dates. And yeah, I don't know if many of us will still be there on the 50th one. So a few of us are going to try and catch up. Well, everybody, thank you so much for chatting and connecting today. I really wish I could see you all tomorrow, but as I said, I will be away. And but back again next week, where I will be looking at Robert Vowless, his information, and he digs deeper into some of the doctrinal issues, and we'll look at some of those as well. Thanks for joining me, as I said, and really having a great discussion today on the story of Monica, Adelaide, and Robert Thomas Vowless. Please go and find out more about them on truthorfables.com. And I'm going to go off and reread this right now. Have a great weekend, everybody. See you soon.